Now we're going to get into sharing and disseminating maps. Let me hop over here. All right, so this is the point where like we've made the best map we can. We're really happy with it. Now, how do we make those really cool interactive map experiences for our audience? And here in Create App, we can do instant apps, which are these focused experiences, different templates you can choose from, or a story map if you really want to provide a lot more narrative and multimedia to your map. And then dashboards is another great way to do that, where you really want to be able to sum up different different attributes within your map's extent. So here, what we've done, let me just orient you to this map, the layer legend. Here we go. We've got farmers markets in the District of Columbia and symbolized on a particular policy, if you will, whether both SNAP and WIC are accepted. And SNAP is the Supplemental Nutritional Assistance Program. WIC is a similar program for women, infants, and children. So whether they accept these nutritional benefits or not, pink farmers markets show that neither of these benefits are accepted. And then there's one in yellow where somehow WIC is accepted, but not SNAP. So I want to polish this up before I hand it over and show it to maybe a district-wide advocacy group or a farmers market manager or something like that. So I'll just put it into an instant app here really quickly. Like I mentioned, there's a whole bunch of different templates that will come up, and you can get a little bit of a preview of them if you'd like. Do we want people to be able to look up something with it, or search nearby, or just kind of show the map itself? Different focused experiences are in these different templates. I'm going to use minimalist for right now, so I'll choose that one. We can give our app a title now, DC Farmers Markets app. There we go. Yep, okay, we'll save it there. And then it'll take no coding whatsoever to configure this instant app. It's just a matter of maybe 5 to 10 clicks, and it gives you a little tour of it all. You can exit out of that pretty quickly. Step 1, pick your map. Yep, that's the one I want. There are some apps where you will be picking multiple maps if you're doing a compare or a portfolio kind of thing. Step 2, do we want a legend panel? Yes, we do. Do we want a pop-up panel? Yeah, we do, because we spent time configuring that pop-up, as Jim showed with the air quality thing. Different options like that. And then do we want to enable search? It's kind of centered in DC, so I can turn that off, and you'll notice the search bar goes away. So it can simplify our map, but if we did want it, there's a few options there with it. And then do we want a light theme or a dark theme? Here's the dark one. I kind of like the light one. And then just like that, I'm going to click publish. And let me show you what this app looks like. We'll launch it. And it's just a really clean way to display your map. This was the minimalist template, so we can read a little bit of info about it. Clicking on some of these pop-ups, we'll see some information. This pulls directly from the pop-up. So both SNAP and WIC are accepted here, and we've got the percentage of people living underneath the poverty level. So things like that. It's a way to create an interactive app. Now, I could have very easily chosen a different template, and I did here. This one uses the nearby template. And so what this wants people to do is to say, okay, I'm interested in 1 mile around me or 2 miles. Maybe I'm interested in zero 0.5 miles around me. And I can type in an address and it'll just show me the farmers markets within this radius and their pop-up from this web map that I built for the nearby template. So that's a little bit about instant apps. There were also story maps and dashboards that were two other options there. Here's a story map that is about ocean plastics. And I'm sure some of you have seen story maps already, but what it is basically a whole narrative where you're describing this issue, and it really gives you a chance to add context and add some links, some video, pictures, all kinds of stuff, different maps here. You can actually add static maps to story maps as well, just as an image like this one, or interactive maps, obviously, like we mentioned earlier with that progressive reveal where you can zoom in and really show off your pop-ups in a planned way. Sometimes people call this map choreography. I've heard it described. And as a former dancer, I just love that. So um, but the point is that, yeah, there's really great ways to do these kind of story maps where you're providing such rich detail and research, the way that I'm going to skip to the bottom here and just show the citations even that were used throughout. And it's sometimes great to end with a call to action with these things. Story maps are often used at that advocacy stage. And so, what are you trying to get your audience to do? So that's story maps. Moving on to dashboards. Here's one about coral bleaching. Coral bleaching happens when, I'm sure there are people on the call who know more about this than I do, but my understanding is that white coral reefs are unhealthy coral reefs, and it happens when either the water or the habitat there is not healthy. So this is a real-time dashboard that shows different coral reefs that are at these different alert stages. No alert, watch, warning, alert 1 and alert 2, and there's even some information from NOAA about what those exactly are. But there's it's a great interactive dashboard. I looked at this about a month ago and the number was not 32. So it's a real-time type of thing. You can get information about these different coral reefs. And again, this comes from the pop-up that you've set up in your web map. This one's at alert level 1. So something to perhaps intervene if possible. Another dashboard that I really like that kind of speaks to the issue that was brought up earlier of, oh man, this thing is in my way. Speaks to the issue of consequences and after the fact policy, what went on in terms of effects afterward. There was a housing policy called Redlining, where basically different neighborhoods were graded on both environmental and racial composition. And then this had enormous consequences in terms of investment in those neighborhoods. And so the grades went from A all the way to D, and those are the labels here on the map. But if we click on some of these neighborhoods in the Richmond area. Let me just enact this here. For this polygon, we see that the temperature today is 3.2 degrees higher than the citywide average. What the impervious surfaces are, tree cover, all kinds of stuff. And then we click on another neighborhood, we'll get another set of attribute values displaying to us, versus a neighborhood here in this A grade, probably higher tree cover, not as high temperature, things like that. So I like this dashboard, even though it's not real time. It is a great interactive way to show the consequences of a previous policy. And sorry about this. Here are examples about apps that show more than one map. Say you have a whole series of maps that you want to display. One of those instant app templates was called Portfolio app, and it's a great way to show a whole series of maps. So Jim mentioned earlier, we were recently playing with gross domestic product by county. That's the name of the layer. All these maps have different names to them. So for example, here's one where it shows the percent of GDP as a percentage of the state itself. So you can see like Clark County, where Nevada is located, is a huge percentage of Clark County, where Las Vegas is located, is a huge percentage of Nevada's overall GDP, and same with Phoenix to Arizona. But yet California seems to be a little bit more spread out in terms of its counties making up the state's GDP. And then it goes on to show manufacturing, even breaking down that further into durable goods versus non-durable goods and what exactly that is, GDP that comes from real estate, etc. And it's just a nice way to present this whole series of maps like this.
I really like that example, Diana, because it's one layer that the GDP, the Bureau of Economic Analysis team that put that layer together, they spend a certain number of hours or days or weeks or months, I don't know, but they invested a certain amount of energy in that and then put it up. And then it stops, right? It's up to all of us to decide, do I want to use that? This set of maps, I don't know, what do we estimate usually? About 1 hour to 2 hours most to make each of these maps. Once you have the layer established and it's posted, from there, each of these maps is only an hour or two, and that's to get it, relatively perfect. I'll never say perfect, but to get them quite functional and useful, and in this case, attractive, eye-catching, it's only an hour or two more to get that good map out. And that's the great irony we see in the policy businesses. We're like, well, the data is there and the need is there. It's just, we're an hour or two away from having a conversation. Let's do this. Let's go do this right now. And I think that's the enthusiasm we want to communicate to you all is Living Atlas, the policy maps collection, all the other online maps that are out there. You're 1 or 2 hours away from getting, was the whole reason that we wanted to do this webinar. And I think this is one of the great examples of how a little bit of effort can really yield a lot of different value out of a single layer.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say the bulk of the work is really getting that layer established from the tabular data or maybe imagery in different cases. But once you've got the layer, the map possibilities, like Jim said, it's maybe an hour or two to really focus it, answer a very particular question, and bring the data to life. I'm going to switch to the slides now, and I hope you don't mind if I show it in slide sorter view rather than presentation view. I think I'll just mess it up if I do that. But I want to end with thinking about your map's medium. We've seen a whole bunch of different targeted instant apps, StoryMaps, dashboards. Even a static print map has its place. What does your audience need to do with your map? Do they need to do anything at all? Just view it? Or do you want them to interact with it? Do you want them to type in their address or zoom into their community? And how will you do that? And I think considering making multiple versions for multiple audiences, like that farmers market example, it was just a few quick changes to the pop-up to make it more of a consumer-facing app where you can type in your own address, see the hours of these farmers markets, things that consumers would be interested in. It's just showing that attribute in the pop-up versus that community advocacy district-wide version where I'm showing the percent poverty rates that is something that's going to be of interest to them. It's just turning off that poverty layer and taking it out of the pop-up and putting something else in, spending less than 5 minutes to make another instant app, and then you've got this whole other presentation that speaks to a new audience. So thinking back to what we mentioned, it starts with the data. You spend a whole bunch of your time doing that data janitor work of making the layer. Then you can make one map and oftentimes several maps. And those maps, great maps, are the foundation for great apps. And so an app is really only as good as the web map and the pop-up. The pop-up really travels in a lot of these instant apps and in StoryMaps. So getting the symbology right, obviously, but also getting the interactivity to show what you want is really going to help you out when you go to make these interactive apps. And then also think about the audience in terms of that policy lifecycle. What kind of app are they going to need to consume? So let me pause there and see if there are questions. Or comments. It doesn't have to be a question.
Well, while people think on it, Diana, how often do we start on the left side of the screen versus talking about the middle part, the product we think we want? Where do we start? Do we always start on the far left?
No. Often we're starting, I'd say, in this area in terms of, okay, I saw this new policy, or hey, someone's coming to us with this problem. And we know that they can be served so much better with a map or two. And so we'll say, hey, well, where did you get that statistic? And often it comes from, census or CDC or one of these federal agencies. Like, oh, okay, so there's data out there that can be made into a layer, or maybe already is offered as a layer in Living Atlas. We can make a web map and a really great experience and presentation, pretty well. And yeah, so we're not always starting with, oh, hey, I found this great tabular data set.
Yeah.
But we'll have to go back there at some point.